You started?
Just a minute.
Oh. So for the task force, who's not here? I see Paul, I see Barry, I see Chuck. I never get all the tiles, so is Dave and Mary here? Or Dave and Mary here?
I
And
am here.
Two Daves?
Mary's not here yet.
No, Dave is on.
Dave Hocking?
No, not Dave Hocking. So it's Mason, Dave Gerstenhaber, Chuck Phillips, Barry Walker, Paul Overton, Nan, Janine, and me. That's it right now.
Can I start? Is YouTube on now?
Oh,
Jeff?
wait, Mary just, shoot, let me get her in here. She just signed on. Hold on.
Okay.
Give me a second here. Okay, so we have Mary and Jerry Hapka, and Paul Agassi.
Okay.
So I'll just let everybody in.
Okay.
I believe so.
Okay. I'm going to start by making the announcement. The reason I'm running the meeting is Kathy's on vacation. And that if members of the public come to the meeting, they're going to be muted while the task force conducts their business. And then when we have public comment, of course, they'll be unmuted so they can ask questions and have comments. So we're going to do, as the agenda says, we're going to go over the Kimballsville material just for the matrix to say, when it should be done, what the priority is. And then we're going to go through the written material that Janine prepared, all of it. And both Barry and Chuck have submitted some new ideas that they want included in that material. But I'm going to ask if they would wait until we get through the material as it's written. And at the end, we'll go back. We'll start with Chuck, and then we'll ask Barry. Barry can talk about what he's interested in discussing. That makes sense. It's just I'm trying to be orderly about it so we can get through what we need to get through, and then we can discuss what we want to discuss. And then we have the open forum where we can talk with the members of the public. And then we'll end up by going back. Oh, we won't have to do the matrix because Janine says she's going to do it as we go through it. Does that make sense?
My comments, Dan, my comments would only be maybe 3 to 4 minutes. So really like just a clear.
But that's your part, but other people may have other things to say because it's fairly controversial. So we're going to do it at the end. I just really want to get through all the material and then we can chat all we want. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, Janine.
Okay, so we're going to start with Kimballsville, and I just want to remind everybody we're doing the priority hierarchy. And if you remember from the prior chapter you got, there is several different hierarchies. A would be act on. That means you start it within the near term, within 2 years of plan adoption. C would be you consider acting on, which means you would start the recommendation within 3 to 5 years of plan adoption. E is explore. That means you would consider the recommendation based on time and funding. It is possible that you could decide all of a sudden it's a good recommendation and you want to start it within 2 years of the time frame, but it is more open-ended. And then O is ongoing for items that just are continuous in the township. So we're going to go back through Kimballsville. We're not going to rehash the recommendations. You'll see in yellow that we already have the changes made from the last meeting. So we are just going to now go through and assign the recommendations and the actions, and when you should be acting on those actions. And again, that's A for within the next 2 years. And then we go to C for within 3 to 5 years, E for exploring, an open-ended time frame, and then O for ongoing. So completing the village master plan with a focus on the branding. Should that happen within 2 years of the plan, 3 to 5 years of the plan be explored? Or obviously it's not an ongoing item.
Before we get off mute. So one of the things about the village master plan, Janine, is we were talking about the Mason-Dixon Heritage Trail and the number of efforts that are going on now to connect the townships to each other, enhance Kimballsville Village, now that we're going to have sort of an influx of horse folks with the events going on at Fair Hill, I think that we would want to do an, act on now, but I mean, maybe I'm just getting boggled down in the semantics, but this is something that we need to be active and taking advantage of opportunities as they arise. So is it an ongoing effort because there are multiple facets to this? Or is it like, this is something that as a township, we need to act now, that we can't, be passive here because this stuff's starting to happen? So
I would recommend, based on what you're saying, that the Mason-Dixon plan would be the A within 2 years of the comp plan, and then this would follow right after the Mason-Dixon plan. So
Right.
we're going to do priorities. You could give it an A also, but the Mason-Dixon plan, should it be funded this fall, will probably be, it'd be a 1.5 to a 2-year plan. So if that finishes, and let's just say 2 years conservatively, then this could be the next item. It just depends on if you want to bump it up and show it as a higher tier by calling it A, even though it's probably going to start on the 2-year mark.
Yeah.
You want to push it back a little bit.
I think the other part, and I need some input from the rest of the group here, is I don't know necessarily what a village master plan, like what does that entail when you talk about branding and building onto the historic village character, right? So that means that we're going to do something. And so
Right.
if we were going to say, okay, Nan, Chuck, Barry, we're going to go do something here, what would the 4 of us be doing?
This is what it does right here that I'm highlighting. So you look at very specific opportunities, you look at the existing conditions, you look at very specific walkability opportunities, land uses, parking, traffic calming, and
Right.
then the branding related to this. You already have the Mason-Dixon plan in place. So the branding based upon what you've already decided on the Mason-Dixon plan and the coordination
Yeah. So
with
Well,
other.
So
I have-
I don't think that's an A, because I don't think we're ready to act on that, right? Because we don't have, like, there a number of things have to come into place before we do this, and I don't think we have a critical mass of, I'm going to just say the word stuff because I don't have another word, of stuff in Kimballsville to get people excited about, right? Like,
So we'll put it as a C and move to the next one. Is that okay with
Yep.
everybody?
Yeah, I would say C. I would say C. That was what I was going to say. It's too early to try to do something. We have to see what the 5-star brings in and what Mason-Dixon brings in and that sort of thing.
And the Mason-Dixon plan, I'm just going to give an A because we've talked about this several times now. So I think we can just move on
yeah,
with that. This community charrette for branding ideas, this would be probably associated with I would think it would be logical to do this around the time you do the village plan. If that makes sense to you all.
Yes.
Participate in the Chester County Village Walks program. London Britton just did a tour of the London Track area, Welsh Baptist area. So this would be either an explore, I would think, or an ongoing. I don't know that you have a specific time frame for this, but I would probably put this as an E, explore.
Yes, we talked about it in the historical commission, so do it as an explore. I went to the London Britton one. It was quite nice.
Good. Work with farmers to create a Kimballsville farmers market. I think this would be an explore.
Yes.
And it's going to be based on the outcomes of the other efforts that we just listed. Establish a wayfinding signs for Kimballsville Village. This again is going to be related to the village plan, I think, and the recommendations in that plan, and also the recommendations in the Mason-Dixon plan.
So would we make it a C?
So I would say either a C or an E to explore it. Why don't we make it a C? Because I think it's going to be directly related to the village plan.
I agree.
Okay, moving on to the next set. Oops. So we're moving on to historic resources section. Develop the graphic design guidelines for Kimballsville as a local historic district. I think this should either be an A or a C, because right now you have the design guidelines in words. But it can be difficult for somebody to follow and understand what is wanted exactly. I would probably make it a C, and orchestrate it as maybe a action that has to associated with the village plan. Because you can't do everything at once. You know, if you're doing a village plan, trying to get involved in design guidelines might be a lot as well, but you could do them back to back. So what do you think?
I agree.
Prepare the National Register nomination for Kimballsville. Right now, a portion of the village is National Register eligible. So
I think that's a question. Is Paul Lagasse there? Can he speak? Joan, can you?
He's on. Let me, okay. he's on.
So I would say this is an E.
perfect. Continue to keep the village as a local historic district. That's obviously ongoing. But then we also added consider other options for historic resource protection and their adaptive reuse. Should that be an ongoing, all of it?
I would agree with ongoing.
And then moving into the next set of recommendations, this is the walkability and traffic calming for Kimballsville, employ traffic calming techniques. Some of this is going to be done obviously with the whatever's happening with PennDOT in the village, but there might be other traffic calming techniques. What level of priority would those be for the village? Definitely not A at this point, because
Explore, is that the E? Is that the, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know how much we can do because it's a state road that runs through Kimballsville. So there's only so much we can do.
Isn't Appleton also a state road?
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I don't, like, what would we study? The parking lot of the pizza place, or, you know? I think the paragraph, if we put it in there, it makes it sound like we don't know Kimballsville's not township roads.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think so. I mean, I think
common
part of
study
it
is
is
worthwhile though.
What's
Because
that?
then, if you have a traffic calming study in place, then when PennDOT does road improvements, even if it's something relatively simple, then the township has a study in place to say, hey, look, we've done this study. This is what we want policy wise. And we've actually looked into this a little bit further than just policy. And this is, we would like to work with you to have you do these improvements rather than it being, I guess, potentially studied on the fly when PennDOT's ready to make, you know, changes or enhancements. So I think
we were
probably
part of the,
appropriate.
we
I
were
think
part of the PennDOT study. Like we were involved.
Yeah, I think, Paul, I think the point is just for us and, you know, future boards to be mindful that, you know, that this is something that can impact greatly the.
Well, can we at least reference the current PennDOT study in some way so that we at least acknowledge that it's been done? Not here. It sounds like we better get on a traffic study. I want, it's been done.
I see. Yeah,
Can
well,
we
there's
just
that three-way
reference-
stop sign, right? That's supposed to go in at some point in the future.
It's been partly done. It's not a traffic calming study, is my understanding that they've done, according to my office. It's
No. There was definitely traffic coming. We had islands in the roads with the big flower pot in the middle and bumps and all sorts of traffic calming. Safety was the name of the study, right? But traffic calming in the village was definitely part of safety. But the rest outside the village was less about traffic calming, it's more about safety.
Well, why don't we leave it as E, and, you know, and maybe Janine can put in something saying that, you know, make a note about PennDOT. We need to move
Yeah,
on.
that's all I'm asking, Jeannie. Is there
Yeah.
some way you can
Yep.
reference the PennDOT study so that
There you go.
it
Great.
doesn't sound like we're ignorant of that study or something.
Okay,
Right.
let's keep
Can-
moving. We got.
Can I just make one quick suggestion here? I would like to, I agree with Paul that we should reference the PennDOT study, but I also agree, I would also like to say that this should happen after PennDOT does the 896 SIP program, because that changes what we're basing everything on. That's why Explore is essential here. PennDOT's going to change the lay of the land.
And just a quick note, it wasn't the level of traffic calming study that the person who wrote this recommendation was getting to. And also, we tried to track down what the final recommendations were for that traffic calming study, and it seems to be changing. So this would be more of a study where the township says, this is what we want, and we don't want to keep having it change what the recommendations are. Different people have different conclusions about what that study said. And the conclusion is that nobody's entirely sure what was decided on in the end, because it's taken a while and conditions have changed over time. That's all I want to say about why this was put as a recommendation. Okay, address parking to remote visitations of the village and businesses.
It's an E, probably.
And then the next recommendation, consider how to make 896 less desirable. This is something we talked about quite a bit. This almost seems like an ongoing.
Well, I think it's also we should start it. So maybe it's an A, because if we wait, it's just going to get worse. So maybe an AO.
I was wondering if, I think personally, truck traffic has gone down since those plants closed in Newark, and I don't know how much worse it is nowadays.
Yeah, I still see a lot on Appleton Road, to tell you the truth. So
Okay.
they've got to go through the village.
Okay, identify and implement improvements to improve facilities for walking and biking at priority locations. Some of this is going to be done a little bit in the Mason-Dixon study, and some will be done in the village master plan. So some of this will be, done in association with that, but I don't know the extent will be done that you need to have done to actually implement those recommendations. So I would say this may be, I don't know if it's an E or it's an O. You're going to be doing this for quite a while.
It's either is fine with me. Anybody else have something to say?
It seems like all these are subsets of the very first one that said study the village.
So I guess then it's an E. Let's make it an E.
Yeah, they do go into, you're right about that. They are subsets.
Well, should they get the same rating?
Plan didn't happen, then the reason the recommendations of the actions are in here is to make sure that the actions you are interested in are covered, just in case for whatever reason you decide not to do a village plan, but you decide that this is important. So it's sort of I guess, giving options if you didn't want to do the full shebang. So I'm sorry, did you say E?
Isn't that what it was? The master plan was an E?
The master plan was a C, I believe,
Was a C?
because it was going to come right after the Mason-Dixon plan. But
yeah.
Implement improvements, though.
So E.
Yeah, I think it has to be an E, because implementing, you have to do the plan first before you. This should answer Dave's question about what's in a village plan. All these actions can make up the village plan. Okay, so we finished that.
So let's move on to our chapter for tonight.
Okay, so our chapter for tonight is the road and other community infrastructure chapter. And for goodness sakes, we just got Office 365, so it's a little goofy. Okay, so again, when we review these chapters, we have the vision in front of you all so you can see what the vision is in relation to the chapter. So this chapter does cover your roadway network. It covers your on-road bicycling. It also covers all your other community infrastructure, including emergency services, sewer and water, stormwater, and those sorts of things. So based on what I just said this chapter covers, does this seem like a good goal for the chapter?
I think it's
Nobody's
fine.
speaking. I'm going to assume it is okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Anybody else?
Yeah, no, I think it's fine. The only question I have, and you scroll back, I don't want to belabor the point real quick, but we talk a lot about talking about retaining rural roads and the community infrastructure. When we talk about enhancements, do we want to talk about the like I know a can of worms, bike lanes or walkable paths, or making our roads a little bit more pedestrian friendly? I don't know if that's appropriate here or not, but when we talk about roads, we have a conversation right now about a road where there's an opportunity to enhance that road safety as well as put in bike lanes on that road and hiking lanes on that road. And so I wonder if that's something that we want to kind of say in here about, enhancing the character of the roads to promote pedestrian safety, or so. I don't know what the right word is, but.
So do you want to say something like to promote on-road cycling?
It's in the paragraph below, the one right below. I don't know.
Okay. All right. As long as it's captured somewhere. We don't need to make a huge all-encompassing objective. As long as it's captured somewhere, that the focus should be, when we talk about safety of our roads, we're talking about pedestrians and vehicles. So if it's captured in the Y, that's good enough for me.
Well, it
Okay,
just talks about the on-road there as a community input.
Yeah.
Right, that's community input. That's not the goal, though. That's a little different.
Yeah.
So, all right, well then you can add it in there.
So maybe we could just say that, focusing on the safety for not only our drivers, but our pedestrians. Or however, whatever better wording than that.
One thing that's kind of opposing directives there or goals is, it was a little bit better said in our old comp plan that we want to retain the rural character of the road. This just says retain rural roads. Well, I don't know what that means, but the other plan was a little more specific. The rural character of the roads means we leave in some curves and we leave in some humps and we leave in what makes it a windy rural road, right? If we flatten every curve or straighten every curve and flatten every hump and make it 6 lanes wide, it's no longer a rural road. So we just have to be careful. I agree, we want some on-road cycling, but we also, what makes a rural road and why do we like them?
Yeah, not every road needs to be a cyclable road.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that the character, 90% of these could have that rural character, and the 10% that are nice biking areas could have that improvement. So there's a prioritization issue.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out that what is a rural road is what appeals to us is exactly what makes it hard to bike on.
So with that information, it sounds like we need to get rid of the on-road cycling portion of that wording in the goal.
No, I agree with Barry. It's not all roads have to be both. We just have to think about not clearing all the roads for cycling and retaining.
Because remember, we also have the buggies and the farm equipment in this particular chapter that we're talking about.
So we're going to talk about those items as we move down. So I don't know that if we put it in try to put everything in that first sentence, then it makes it difficult to talk about things.
I agree. And I think the other thing is, like, what are we actually talking about when we say rural roads? Are we talking about windy roads? Because there are plenty of modern windy roads. Are we talking about gravel roads? So it's.
We talk
I'm
about
kinda
it
like,
a little bit further down. We'll get to that.
as residents, we know what we're talking about, but it's kind of,
I like the addition of character.
sure.
I, I I think that makes sense. I agree with Paul.
So in the next paragraph down, the big one, if I could jump to that, is this is all good. No, maybe it's not that one.
These are the community survey findings related to the subject matter of the chapter.
But while I read through that, 54%, 81% think we plow well, and I just wonder if they all know what's a township road and what's not, right? That's always in the back of my mind, because I always remember being.
Well, when we did do the survey, we did specifically include a map, if you remember.
I know.
Yellow and pink roads on them, and we specifically called out township versus state. Whether people looked at it when they were answering the survey, I don't know, but we did have a map right there for them.
So
I think the survey captures these numbers accurately. It's good to go, from my opinion.
well, where I was going though is we have all this township road information in the first part of the paragraph with the percentages, right? But then we immediately jump down to township roads. Can you see the sentence that starts with survey results indicate that maintenance of township roads should continue to be addressed, and gateways and traffic calming along 896. It just feels like we're implying 896 and then the next sentence 841 is a township road, township problem, because we use the word township road. It's not. That was,
Maybe you want to say something like a road within our township.
yeah, that's where I was getting. I was just trying to not encourage the misunderstanding of what's a township road and what's not.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the major things is, you're right, the difference between a township road and a state road. So I think, is there a way for us in this paragraph to say something like, survey indicate that the maintenance of township roads should be continued to be addressed, and that gateways, state roads such as PA 896,
that would fix it.
and then you just say in that gateway roads such, whatever, state roads.
So period.
That gateway roads such as the state road PA9, whatever. Put it in there. Say, state gateway roads, or I'm sorry, I'm trying to edit on the fly. Janine, you know how to do this. Make an English sentence.
Okay, because the shoulder widening for safety for on-road cycling, that was also on PA. So basically the point of this is you just want to make sure what's a township road versus a state road is separated.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I just felt like we were mixing it all together.
And
That was a good catch.
I think most people know 896 is a state road and 841.
It says PA, so
But the state roads like Appleton and Creek Road, they don't know that. It is on our website, but
I used to get a giggle with Jeff. I don't know if he's on the phone, but how many times we would get a complaint about whatever, pothole or plowing.
Yep.
Sorry, not our road. Sorry, not our road. Like the majority of time.
Yeah,
Chesterville Road's the current one, Paul.
yeah.
And that's a state road.
You will never go wrong if you're explicit. So you might as well just add it in there, because even when you tell folks, hey, this is a state road, like we're the face of their, we're the people they interface with. They don't interface with Harrisburg. So it's kind of on us to push these issues.
Yeah, exactly, Dave. They want to know who we're going to call.
Right,
At the
exactly.
state level.
And
to fix
they're
Chesterville Road.
right. They're right to think
Sure
that.
they are. Sure they are.
That's our job.
I'm going to call Jeff.
Right, yeah, exactly. You come to me, and the first thing I'm going to do is make a stern phone call to the township office so they can call Harrisburg.
So the point of the whole conversation is just to distinguish the sentence to make sure what the survey findings for state roads versus township roads are clearly distinguished.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we go on to talk about a little bit more survey findings. Where the intersections should be improved. And that's not really that surprising. 896 and Appleton Road.
Is that fact-based? Like, is that from a survey, or that's just our opinion that those are the most traveled roads? Because I thought Gypsy Hill would beat Guernsey.
This is based on the survey results. This is not based on any kind of putting down strips on the road or any kind of traffic counts. No, this is just based on survey results.
Okay.
So, yeah. And then we move on past roads and we start talking about groundwater and other types of situations in the township. So we have groundwater, we have emergency services. We task residents and property owners about electric lines. We asked about the township administration, building code enforcement, et cetera. And then we also asked about volunteer opportunities and what people might be interested in volunteering to do, which is good for the township to know as a way to effectively supplement, township administration with volunteer help. Then there was also input about sewage facilities and specifically reviewing the 537 sewage facilities plan. This was input that came from the interviews and came from the community workshops that people were talking about this particular item, and stormwater management. There was input about that, and particularly along roadsides.
So I don't know if buggies is an appropriate reference. Can we be more descriptive, or horse-drawn carriages or Amish vehicles, or I don't know.
Yeah, we can.
It just feels like
I think we called them buggies in the survey, but
it feels like slang.
Is there language that PennDOT uses for these things that we could be in alignment with?
I don't know. I would have to check on that.
Yeah,
What's
I don't know
that
either.
sign
I just
called
wonder
that
if
has
like
horse-drawn carriage on it.
they use buggies or Amish wagons or
I
whatever.
don't even think Amish is appropriate. Horse-drawn vehicles, horse-drawn.
Yeah, that's true.
Horse-powered vehicles. I don't know.
I've never heard them called anything but a buggy. And the Amish are the only ones I know that are on our roadways with the horse and buggy,
Yeah.
right?
We used the word buggies in the survey, which is why we
Yeah,
just repeated that when we were talking to people also. So, but we can check if there's any more official wording. I mean, I think people probably know in the township what we mean, but
I mean, again, we don't want to get too bogged down in semantics, but
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, so we are moving on to then context. And remember, this first part of context is the bigger regional context. So we talk about Chester County in general, and then also getting down to the regional level. And then when we get into existing conditions, this is where I actually get.
Before you go too far with climate change, where it says that, I would like to see us second line down. It says stormwater management. I would like to see that say sustainable stormwater management. And where it says treatment of stormwater, I would like to see that say rainwater, because we want to treat all water, not just storms.
Well, it's called stormwater is the term, like
Yeah, I know, but
nobody knows what rainwater, like that's not, there's no rainwater management plan, for example. So I don't know if you want to.
I understand that, but we're specifically talking about the treatment of, and I think that all too many times people think that we're only treating storms, and in fact, we're treating all rainwater.
So maybe we need to say stormwater, including all rainwater, just so people don't think there's a separate processy that they're going to be doing a rainwater management plan.
That's fine. I don't, yeah. And then erosion and sedimentation. So that section says contamination of groundwater. Okay, so I would like to see it say additional sustainable stormwater management allows rainwater to recharge the groundwater, which is critical for our drinking resources. And the reason is that contamination of groundwater doesn't happen from storms. We're trying to clean the water as it comes down so that it doesn't contaminate our streams. And we're trying to allow that water to set for a while so that it recharges. Two separate, different thought processes that can't be covered with just contamination of groundwater. Contamination of groundwater happens for a different reason than stormwater management.
Okay, then,
So I would like to see it struck out where it says, and contamination of groundwater and drinking water sources. I would like to see that say additional sustainable stormwater management allows.
do you want to just
to.
email me that wording? It's kind of confusing to do it on the fly.
Yep. But
So
You
does
understand?
everybody else feel they don't want this wording then? We're going to strike all this wording?
I like what you had, and I just want to be careful. I think like you mentioned, Janine, there is, gosh, is it up to 1,000 pages, the Pennsylvania Stormwater manual at this point? And we just kind of want to refer to that because it's been thoroughly investigated and litigated and not reinvent or conflict with that stormwater management manual. So I'm all in favor of just being kind of the current language and saying, okay, stormwater is the label that they gave it. Let's go.
Well, I don't think we should put something in here that's not a truth. So contamination of groundwater from stormwater management is not a real thing. It rains, it comes down, it goes into the stream and it runs downstream. Contamination of groundwater happens at a different process. So that's
Was
my
everybody,
objection.
contamination of groundwater is one of the goals of stormwater management. That's just like a planning, that is a general treatise. But if you don't like how that's phrased, then we can phrase it a different way. Does everybody else want me to cross this out and just go with Chuck's wording? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so Chuck is going to email me the wording. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
It's fine with me.
Okay, so we will,
It's a lot of pressure, Chuck.
it is a lot of pressure.
You already have it, Janine. I already sent it, but I will send it again.
Okay, that was in what you sent earlier?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't make any of those changes because we were going to talk about all your
That's
changes
fine.
at the meeting.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, so getting into specific existing conditions for Franklin. So we talk about roads. At first, does anybody have any changes they want to make for anything about the road information?
Yep. I would like to see pedestrian traffic, or pedestrian travel in there right after horse buggies.
Pedestrian travel on the roads? Or you're just talking,
In addition to, we were just talking about it earlier, in addition to being used for vehicular movements, rural roads are also used for farm equipment, horses, buggies, cycling, pedestrians also. We don't have any other place to walk. We don't have sidewalks.
Yeah, you know, when the township put the guide rail on Churchill Road curve about a month ago, the neighbors walked out and said, "Hey, can you move it 2 feet off the pavement so we have somewhere to step off when the cars go by?" And the guy doing the guardrail said, "A road is for cars, not for walking. Walk somewhere else." I thought that was great.
So like, where do you walk?
Yeah, well, where do you walk? But it's funny though. It's the wrong attitude. We don't have anywhere else to walk. That's our job here today, though, is to try to figure that out, or in the group, I mean.
Does anybody else have anything for this particular section? And if not, existing conditions, just very brief overview on stormwater management and water supply. And then sewage disposal. Does anybody have any comments on this?
Yeah, the last sentence in that stormwater management paragraph,
Mhm.
I didn't understand the sentence. It ends with limited water supply lines primarily in parts of township. I didn't understand what that meant.
Water supply lines would basically be, you don't have water supply lines in most of the township. You have the individual supply through wells. Water supply lines are community or public water.
I understand that, but it seems like you should identify where they are. The sentence didn't make sense to me.
Maybe what you meant to say was, is it intended to be public water supply lines?
I can add community or public water supply lines.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry that I rewrote that one too.
We have some language from you, Chuck?
I do. Most Franklin Township residents rely on individual on-lot water supply through wells, although there is also public water systems in place in the township. These systems are sourced from local surface and groundwater. This underlies the importance of stormwater management measures which both clean the surface water and retain water to allow for groundwater recharge.
Are the community and public systems though, that's Aqua and Chester, that's not local.
Yeah, it's the
One of them.
Octorara. That's
We have also one on Den Road that pulls from a well.
Okay. Joan had sent me a map, and so you're saying that the ones that are for Chester Water Authority and Aqua PA are all locally sourced? They're not bringing water from someplace else?
No, I didn't say that. No, there are some.
yeah, they're bringing it from the Octorara.
Yeah, Octorara.
And whatever feeds into the Octorara would obviously affect, but
The water
know.
provided through Aqua is the one on that Paul is talking about on that's Fox Knoll and Den Road, that area, and that's Aqua.
That's from a well though, right?
Well, it's still Aqua. They provide it from one of their deep wells.
But,
It's an Aqua well then.
but the well is
then-
right on Gypsy Road. It's not coming from far away. Gypsy Hill Road.
Right. And then the other ones where you're saying it's not a well is coming from the Octorara directly, whether it's Chester Water Authority or Aqua PA. I think that's what you're saying, right?
well, Chester Water owns the Octorara reservoir. So I think,
Yeah.
I think they're exclusive. Well, they used to, that's all in flux, but
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I think the update that she just put on there, limited community and public water supply lines. I think that's
That's fine.
satisfies it.
And then there will be a map. Again, we didn't have the current information. You guys have gotten maps in the past that have showed some information about water supply and the existing conditions, but we didn't have the most current information. So Joan supplied that to me based on the notes in this chapter. So we can update that. But anyway, do you all want to go with this generalized language or do you want to use Chuck's specific language? It's up to you.
I like Chuck's language myself.
Yeah, I thought that was well worded as in addition, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to say use Chuck's language. Chuck, you're going to have less to talk about, I think. Well, it's time for you to talk.
yeah.
So use Chuck's language. So could we go back one paragraph? You jumped from the rural roads. That's the paragraph.
There's Webster's and there's Chuck's.
Right.
That's the paragraph where I wanted that language from the old plan, because to me, it was an eye opener. I never really realized why in the middle of the paragraph there, it says rural roads contribute to the township's scenic qualities. And the old comp plan had another sentence after that that said something about due to their, hills and curves, and that we should try to keep them, that our goal should not be to straighten every hill and flatten every curve. And when I read that 10 years ago, it was kind of news to me. I was like, yeah, that's true. So I don't want to lose that, but I can't remember the wording, and I'm not as good as Chuck.
Okay. It's somewhere in here too about the definition of rural roads. I don't think we got to it yet, but
Okay, all right. Well,
we
maybe
have it in parentheses. We say narrow, windy roads with low traffic volumes, I think is what we say, but we can certainly add, that language from the old comp plan.
yeah, please.
Can you find that, Paul, by chance?
I don't know if I have the old comp plan. Or you sent it to us, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to do that.
I have it here. I can look for it while you guys go on.
Thank you.
We're down to sewage.
We are back down. Yeah, we're down to sewage. If no one else has any comments about stormwater and water supply. So sewage, public schools, library, and emergency services. Sewage is pretty straightforward in the township. It's on lot systems. And the township does have the ordinance for regular pumping of the systems every 3 years.
So we'll have our first community system next year or soon. Does that matter? Should we add that or?
You can, if it's definitely a done deal. Is it a done deal or is it still proposed?
It's not proposed. The details are being worked out. But
Okay.
it looks like it's going to happen as soon as they, do what we want them to do. But it looks like it's going to happen. Yeah.
You could say something like with one community sewage system or something. That's all.
Okay, so you don't want me to say anything more than that.
Yeah, that's all. Just trying to keep it factual.
Do you want to, should we say where that new system is, or you don't really, it doesn't really matter?
I don't think we want to say underway.
I'll say it. Yeah.
I don't think we want to say underway, just state that there's one. Yeah, I don't want to see us pointing towards, oh, this is our future.
Okay, hopefully it gets built then. Public schools, library, emergency services. Any comments about this?
Only a very brief comment. I don't know if it even matters. The charter school it's independent, but it's not really. It's chartered by the Avon Grove School District. So they don't exist unless Avon Grove gives them a charter every 5 years. I don't know if that's important.
It's free. I actually looked on their website because that's what I thought too.
Okay.
It's affiliated with the school district, but they say, which I thought was, I didn't really understand where they were going with this, but they specifically phrase it as a public school that's independent of the school district, and they have their own board of directors. But I didn't know that they could, even though they're independent of the school district, I didn't know they could still function without the school district. If the school district completely changed over, how it's phrased on their website gives the impression that they would still stand alone.
I think they're just trying to make the sales pitch that they're independent of the other school board. But Mary's just saying technically they're chartered by.
Right, okay.
I'd just
They
like to
get
know,
public money. They get public money for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd just like to mention to everybody it's 7:20. We're going kind of slow, so we need to pick it up.
Can I go to emergency services?
Yes.
I know we used to be served by both West Grove and Avondale Fire, but I thought we stopped contributing to one of them. Or do we still?
No, we contribute to both. It's still the same, Paul.
Okay, I thought there was a change coming. But okay, no question.
Okay, so moving on, everything's jumped with my comments. So we will get to the recommendations and actions. So the first recommendation that you had already all agreed on a while back was for community facilities in a rural landscape and the appropriate and adequate community services facilities within the practical and fiscal limitations of the township as a rural community. And then getting into the specific actions. I don't know if you have any comments on why do this, or you're ready to just move into the actions. And as we go through the actions, we can also go through the implementation, prioritization of the actions. So we can just do it all at once. Do you have any comments on the why do this?
Nope, let's move on.
Okay, so we're going to be reviewing the 537 plan to assure it continues to meet the township rural vision. And then under that, the specific actions obviously are to update the 537 plan, to have on-lot sewage disposal be the priority. And note that as of the last 537 plan, there were 2 larger systems, one for the early learning center and one for the heritage apartments. And although they still are on-lot systems, they're not your typical on-lot system per one use. One individual, like residential use sort of thing. And then we asked, you were interested in if there's a possibility of new technologies for sewage disposal. We did email DEP to ask them about this topic. Usually, if it's a technology that hasn't been proven, it's considered experimental and is usually not approved by the state for the sewage facility planning if there are addendums, modules, et cetera, when development happens. So we did email them, and we have not heard back yet.
Could you just make one addition? When you, as of the last 537 plan, could you give the date of that 537 plan? Because the updating and everything like that sort of gives, it needs a context for a time.
Sure. Okay, then the whole gray water idea. I'm starting to look a little into that to increase the life of on-lot systems, use less water, et cetera. They redirect water from sinks, et cetera, that can be reused for non-potable uses. And then continue to utilize the sewage management ordinance. And this is what I was referring to before, where you have regular pumping every 3 years to ensure that the systems last longer and are also maintained. Anybody have any questions about any of that? And then updating this 537 plan in terms of the time frame of when this action should be undertaken. I think this will probably be an ongoing topic. Does that seem reasonable? Okay, then moving to the next item.
Wait, could you just pause for 1 second?
Sure. Where are you looking for me to pause?
We use the term twice, take into account new technologies, including green. Is that appropriate in both places? This seems repetitive. Both,
You're back on this one, right?
both
on the
blue
back.
paragraphs, both blue paragraphs end in new technologies, including greening. Go up a little more to the blue. Yeah,
Right.
how takes into account new technologies, including greening. And then the next one says the same thing. Maybe it's okay. It just caught me that why are we repeating ourselves?
Well, one's for water and one's for sewer. So they're not the same topic area.
Okay, I guess I don't know what greening is, so maybe I don't know how it applies.
I mean, greening is basically using natural systems and to not have to have man-made systems. We talked about that a lot, I think 2 chapters ago when we were talking about green infrastructure.
Hmm.
So we basically covered that in another chapter in terms of what greening is. This wording, we've talked about this wording many times. I think we finished off all this wording in December. We talked about it from last October to last December.
Yeah, no, you
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has any questions about it or what you want to do about it. This word greening is basically all over your plan.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't know. Does anybody else have any questions about it or? Moving on to water service areas. Then Joan answered this first question that we have because we have old public and community system service areas. So other than that, so one of the recommendations is to review the water service areas to ensure they continue to meet the township's vision, groundwater, surface water quality, as well as take into account new technologies. And again, this is including this trying to use natural systems to the greatest extent possible, rather than always building some kind of hardscaping system. Again, the policy and the action steps would be to continue to use the on-lot water supply systems as the priority method for supply. Then also, as in other recommendations, we start to talk a lot about education of residents and property owners so they understand what it means to live in a high quality watershed, which is the Big Elk. And some information about that and action steps that residents can do to understand what it means to live in that kind of watershed and how that impacts stormwater and how that impacts groundwater infiltration and how that impacts surface water. So, and then we listed a bunch of resources that the township could look at for that particular action. Review the township code. You have a whole section in the township code just on water, water supply of various types. Look at zoning standards for groundwater protection.
I have a question about that.
Mhm.
Can you explain how we would change, why we would change zoning? How does that affect? I'm not seeing the two correlation.
The correlation between what groundwater supply and zoning.
Yeah.
There are communities that do either groundwater protection in zoning or an overlay. And basically it's when a change of use happens or a development process happens through zoning, you are encouraging somebody to take certain steps to try to preserve that groundwater resource. Whether it's working in collaboration with the Stormwater Management Ordinance, or whether it's ways to, during, again, the zoning process, the change of land use process, whether it's ways to promote infiltration, pervious surface coverage rather than as much impervious surface coverage. So it would be supplementing what you already have in your township code, but through a different processes.
Okay.
And it may not be for you all. I don't know. These are the action steps. You know, what you have in chapter 26, the water may be sufficient between that.
We had a commercial user put in a big well, and we seem to have no protection. They could draw as many gallons as they wanted. Like, I don't see how there's any way to restrict it. Their water.
My understanding is that this statement is talking about polluting the groundwater, but is it preserve?
Well, it says,
So I'm confused about what
it says quantity and quality. So I was looking at the quantity.
You're looking up at what you already have in the township code.
Yeah.
I think currently in the township code, chapter 26 talks about groundwater supply protection, water wells, water quality and quantity
Yeah.
is what that particular, so you have an entire section. To get back to the zoning, yes, it would be more about ways to prevent future development or changes in use, to prevent them from contaminating the groundwater or help infiltration, that sort of thing.
so. Well, so then I have even more of a problem with the next one, the review zoning, because it sounds to me like everybody that doesn't live on the Big Elk is going to get things that might pollute our groundwater.
Yeah. Why did you pick out the Big Elk?
Well, because that is remember up here, it talks about the high quality watershed. So it is listed by the state. There's two different types of watersheds, basically excellent and high quality watersheds. And those are noted by the state as being important watersheds for various reasons. That's a long list of reasons, but basically the cleanliness of the streams, the type of fish that are in the streams, et cetera, where they drain into, the extent they drain. So that's why this recommendation says specifically the Big Elk watershed, because of the high quality nature.
Doesn't the White Clay Wild and Scenic designation give that any special treatment or not?
The White Clay Wild and Scenic designation does give us special treatment at the federal level, but that's a different type of, designation in turn versus this is specifically getting into your zoning ordinance and your local land use controls.
Okay.
And also the Big Elk Creek, the White Clay Wild and Scenic. I don't know that it goes all the way over to the Big Elk Creek because the Big Elk Creek is getting into the elk, different.
No, that's a different watershed in the township.
Yeah, it's a different
So-
watershed in the township. So
So
anyway,
are we-
this is not something, these action steps you haven't seen before. Remember, these are our
Yeah.
throwing out ideas. So if it doesn't seem like the zoning standards is a good idea, we can just cross it out and move on. It's not,
I
Well,
s-
not
I
a make
started
or
out
break.
as being a question, but now I don't like it.
I like the idea of thinking about zoning to minimize impervious surface. I always thought that was I hate when we pave a lot 100%. It just seems wrong, but
I agree.
I also like zoning in this township is actually pretty good at protecting Franklin Township. And so I think it's one of the most powerful tools and it should be explored because groundwater, if we lose that, we've lost everything.
yeah.
So let's use consider using a powerful tool for a precious resource.
So cross out particularly in the Big Elk watershed because it's zoning. It's a give and take. So you're going to push it from the Big Elk to the others, and the others are just as delicate.
Is everybody okay with that? Even though the Big Elk is a high quality watershed, are you okay?
Yeah.
With it, you mentioned it up above, Janine, and that's duly noted. So we're good.
Okay. Okay, and then you have currently in your zoning, you have the 100-foot riparian buffer. So it's just note to continue that.
Can you add to that to increase groundwater recharge right before or after filter? Because it does both, and I think it's important to say it. Increase groundwater recharge. Perfect.
Okay, then a couple other actions here. When updates are needed to township facilities, we talked about this on how to make township facilities more energy efficient. So 2 action items to consider under this action that we had talked about was consider how township facilities could use renewable energy. Some other municipalities in Chester County have done this, both to save, themselves money for running the township facilities, but also almost as demonstration projects saying, we did it, so this is possible, to do. And then look at kind of green infrastructure, which is what we talked about in one of the prior chapters of different types of green infrastructure. And then moving on to.
Did you need to do a ABC on that?
Yeah, we're going to do an ABC in a second. I'm just going to run
Okay.
through these really quickly, just trying to get them done. Understanding the rural community, township doesn't self-fund. We talked a lot about that. So this is basically just saying continue to coordinate with your neighbors. The feedback we got was that the state police are doing a good job for the township. Avon Grove School District, continue with that, continue to support and promote the library. So let's run back through all of these before we get to the next section on the sustainable energy. This will at least show them all in context with one another. So we already did review the 537 plan. So review water service areas. I would imagine this is ongoing also. I don't think this is a one and done kind of action.
It's fine.
Updates are needed to township facilities. Is this an explore?
That's when needed.
So is this an explore or is this an ongoing? An E or an O?
I would do an O.
I would do a no.
I'm struggling to think what township facilities.
Well, the building that the office is in, and
Yeah,
we're looking at finishing off the part that isn't finished. So this would be, look at doing it energy efficient way. I don't know. But yeah, we are looking at that, not this year, but maybe next year.
And then the building, there's a building in the park, Crosland Park.
Yes.
There's
yes,
a building
there is.
there that people talked about during the interviews, trying to find ways to upgrade that building and use the building for kind of community uses.
Yeah, right now it's used as a closet because it doesn't meet the health department standards. The ceiling's not right, the sinks aren't right, the flooring has to be changed. So a good bit of money would have to be put into it, but it is something that we can look into in the near future.
Okay, and then this is just going to be ongoing, I think, for
Right.
the regional facilities. Okay, so moving on to recommendation 2. Here we start to talk about green sustainable infrastructure. We do talk about using natural systems in that other chapter where we talk about resource protection as well. So the subject is sort of split between the two, a little bit between the two, but this is more infrastructure oriented. So you guys already looked at this recommendation. Do you have anything for the why do this? And then the first action item that we've looked at is to continually reassess how to support and encourage the use of all energy sources. We talked a good amount about this in some of our meetings, and if there are ways to explore to have more alternate energy. We thought other municipalities are starting to develop, it's at the infancy stage in Chester County, but other municipalities are starting to develop sustainability advisory committees to help the municipality and residents with these types of items. And then we also, I don't know if it was Chuck, maybe somebody a while ago sent a link about this whole Department of Energy Zero Energy Ready Home Program. Just to show as one example, that's a Department of Energy program, one example of how green building, can occur, not as the only example. And then, of course, alternative energy zoning exists, and just make sure that that stays up to date. Obviously, renewable and alternative energy sources are constantly changing, as are the standards.
It was me with the zero energy ready homes, and my thought is that any homes that get built in our township, especially that are developed, they probably should go in at a very high level of energy efficiency. I don't know whether we can do that without having a special exception from the state, but I think it's a win-win for everybody if we put that other level of energy efficiency on new homes.
I mean, energy efficiency would have to follow the minimum standards in the building code. And as long as homes are following those standards in the building code, I don't know that there's any way other than through incentives that you could.
We can require more than the minimum.
You can
Now,
require more than the minimum if you
right.
want in the building code.
Right.
It's a question, if you want to require more than the minimum, that's the first question. And then through zoning, et cetera, you could incentivize it, but the ways you incentivize it aren't going to be great for the rural character. And that's usually with things like density. Or increased impervious surface coverage is generally how you incentivize these things. And again, for Franklin, I don't think those sorts of things is the trade-off having increased density or, changes in impervious surface coverage.
No, I don't think we trade anything. I think that we consider whether or not we want to increase our level of energy efficiency above and beyond what the current code requires. It's going to come anyways. So we're only going to be 5 years ahead of everybody else. But
so how does everybody else feel about that?
Well, your question is, are we allowed to do it though, right? Do we have?
well, I know how to do it. It is lengthy. I don't know if there's a shortcut. But yeah, we're allowed to petition to the state to increase our building code above and beyond what the building code is.
Yeah, the only other comment I would say is that it doesn't need to be this federal Department of Energy zero energy ready homes. It could be broader than that. I mean, we have a zero energy home and it was not part of that. Although I look forward to the incentive later, perhaps. Like it could be home. Yeah.
Which just says as an example.
Yeah. As an example would be a great way of setting that apart.
Yeah, that's how we did say it, as an example, because if you just say a generalized recommendation without an example, I think that could, just like the word greening. If you have a generalized, item without an example, nobody really knows what to do with that. So
that's perfect. That's perfect.
Is there a desire on this committee to go for what Chuck is talking about and petition the state effectively to change the standards in the building code to be more energy efficient as the baseline requirement?
I like the idea. I just don't know. It seems like a lot to tackle. But you're saying you can put on here as an experiment.
That it's costly, but you might as well. You can support it. It's more costly not to do it. Not that big of a deal. I would support it.
It doesn't cost us anything. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't cost us anything. And to be honest, even the homeowner that purchases the property, they're paying a lot less in energy costs. So
you're right. You're correct. Yeah, that's true.
It's a responsible way to develop.
I think it's a great idea.
I'm sorry, Chuck, I only laughed because I know how expensive our house was. And I was just like, it's a sensitive
No.
hot button. No, but I do support the idea 100% because you're right, long run or even midterm, short term.
So something like that. Is this good with everybody else? If I don't hear anything, I'm going to assume it is. Okay, so explore the use of greening roads, stormwater infrastructure, development design, yada, yada. Again, this is considering if you could have the Sustainability Advisory Committee. And then you're going to need to prioritize what green infrastructures are most feasible. We've talked about a lot of different green infrastructures in this plan, infrastructure types in the plan. It may or may not be realistic for the township to tackle all of those. So getting down to which ones the township is willing to tackle and what order they're willing to tackle. And I think that would be an important item. And for example, this, building code business, it's not green infrastructure per se, but it's certainly greening the type of, building and the energy efficiency of the building. So that would be something that would need to be prioritized as well, since you're not going to be able to tackle everything. And then look at other municipalities for examples. That's always a good case study before you embark on something to see how it went for them, good, bad. Continue to coordinate with county agencies to understand the needed requirements. And then again, you have to look at your local regulations. And this is kind of, I guess, getting back a little bit where Chuck is, but he's on buildings, to just look at green infrastructure types and whether local regulations permit green infrastructure types. A lot of local regulations really don't permit green infrastructure types because the hardscaping is, better known. And at least in current technology is considered more straightforward than trying to use a natural system. So does anybody have any questions about that, or should I keep moving on? I'm going to wait to do the prioritization until we finish this whole recommendation and all the actions. And then a bunch of outreach on green infrastructure. It's always good to have outreach so people know what it means, what it is, etc. And then this is one we talked about a lot during task force meetings last year about this whole idea. And I don't know if you still want to run with this or not, but aim for the township to become a green energy destination in the county. And there was a lot of discussion back and forth about a solar farm. I think somebody investigated the 66-acre Pico property and it's not facing the proper way. So if part of it did become a solar farm, it would be relatively limited and it wouldn't be the entire 66 acres perhaps. But is this concept still something that the direction the township wants to head in, or was this more of a dream idea that's probably not realistic for the comprehensive plan? Certainly, considering the use of charging stations at township facilities is legitimate. But this whole idea of the solar facility.
So yeah, we had a couple of conversations with Pico, and that facility is not right for a major installation. I think talking with them, they marked it down to 6 available acres. And the problem was, just real quick, is Pico's not allowed to generate energy. And so it's very difficult for them to put in an energy generating facility on their property. So they kind of shy away from those sorts of deals. And so there were too many problems with that location for a solar farm. So it's a good idea. It's definitely an aspirational kind of notion that you want to have, but calling out that specific site is probably, that's not the right site to have this kind of a facility on.
So if we cross out the information about the site, and we just say work with Pico, basically to create this potential solar facility, is that still too aspirational for the comp plan? Is the
Well,
concept desired?
I don't know if we would work with Pico, or if we would work with a private, we would work with some sort of private energy generator that would install these facilities. Because again, like I said, Pico buys and distributes energy. They don't generate energy. They're not allowed to. And so we might work with them once we have a location and we're generating energy. There was something else they brought up, and maybe someone else on the board, maybe Barry, I think you had brought this up in the first place too. We might have a notion. There's the other thing is once you hit a certain level of wattage, you become a professional generator, or not commercial generator. That's the right word. And that begins to add its own set of issues. So the question would be, is it the township that's getting into the business of generating energy? And if so, that means much more than simply generating energy and then using it. We actually, once you get above like a certain level, you actually have to put it out onto the open market. You just can't consume it yourself. So again, my point is, I'm getting into the solutions aspect of it, and this really is the intent here is mindfulness, right? Look for options and embrace those options when they come up. So I'd like to be able to capture that here. My only question is the specifics of coordinating with Pico might be too specific, because Pico might not be the right organization to coordinate with for a green energy infrastructure plan. They might have advice, but I don't know.
They do have, I wouldn't necessarily strike it. Even what I would probably do is put it as one of those longer term prioritizations. And so the landscape here changes radically quickly, and you have to operate and coordinate with Pico because, they have the distributed energy group. And if you have a solar farm or solar rooftop or whatever, you have to go through them. So I think the language here is fine, but I would prioritize it as this very long-term project because I agree with you. It's logistically not something we want to sink our teeth into right away.
Right.
So we had a pretty extensive review of solar farms a while back, and at the end of it all, we recommended that we not obstruct. I do not believe it was actually ultimately passed. So we could restate the same thing here, that we want to encourage solar farms, which is what this is, I believe, trying to say. I don't know that we.
Positive, right, Chuck?
What was that?
That's a positive, right? You're affirming this statement.
Yeah, I'm saying that. Yeah, I just think that maybe this is a little too detailed, and really what we want to say is that we want to encourage the development of solar farms.
Yeah, and I don't want to let Pico off the hook. 6 acres is still 6 acres. You never let them off the hook. They're always willing to collect money, but never willing to help sometimes. So I don't want to let them off the hook by necessarily saying, you can have your 66 acres and mow it, and that's cool with us.
Oh, Barry, come on. They just gave us $300 for movie night in the park.
Yeah,
How
but they
generous of
charged me
them.
$10 for my, never mind. I don't want to.
I know. We will, and Chuck, everything that went through the planning commission, everything, right now the board is looking at a solar ordinance that we're trying to get in place, so that if a corporation comes to us and wants to install a commercial solar farm, we have an ordinance in place, and we can move forward with that. So yeah, we're certainly, I don't think we're encouraging, but we're not discouraging it either. We just want to have parameters in place that if you want to do this, so
Right.
however we word that.
But I note that here say the township is currently working on
An ordinance.
to facilitate.
A commercial solar farm.
You might want to say regulate instead of facilitate.
Yeah, that might be a better word.
Does the ordinance not encourage though?
It's neutral.
Exactly. It's neutral.
It's trying to protect residents and producers at the same time.
Right, and maybe future residents of the same land that this farm is on. Right.
Okay, so we are gonna change this recommendation a little bit to have it not be so specific. And then we don't need this business anymore. Right? We're not gonna start with Franklin Township facilities and then expand out.
I don't think the township should get involved in providing charging stations. I think if anything, we could encourage the local gas stations to provide charging stations.
How does everybody else feel?
You mean if I drive my electric car to work, Chuck, I can't charge it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
I don't have any idea what a charging station costs. If it's a minimal amount of money, it is the way of the future. I don't know. I don't know what they
You're-
cost.
They don't-
Oh, well, you're paying for the electricity. It's not
Yeah.
the charging station. You're plugging it
Okay.
into the wall.
Well, wait, I want to correct that. I have an electric plug-in car, and
Okay.
you're certainly welcome to build one and pay for electricity like my work does, but there's also many out there that the vendor installs it at their cost, and then the user swipes a credit card and they pay for their own electricity. All you're doing is providing a parking spot.
I wouldn't object to that at all then.
Oh, I like that idea.
Now, it can be anywhere in between, right? You can build it.
Right.
or-
Why don't you say, consider allowing charging stations at township?
Yeah, I mean, the park might be a good one. You allow it, but you don't have to fund it or pay for the electricity.
Right.
We just said township facilities, so we're not
Yeah,
specifying if it's the park or one of the preserves or the township building or whatever. So we're leaving this as is?
Fine with me.
Okay, so let's go back and do the prioritization then. So this is under sustainable infrastructure and energy, continually reassess. This should just be an ongoing item, I think, because it is a continual. Explore the use of greening the roads, etc. I think this is an explore or ongoing. What do you all think? Explore or ongoing? Or nobody cares?
I think it's ongoing, right?
It's ongoing, yeah.
Okay, provide outreach. This is going to be an ongoing. And then this whole idea of encourage the development of solar farms. Sounds like the township's already sort of doing that now with the new ordinance. Well, maybe not encourage, but at least taking it into account. So is this ongoing or explore?
It's ongoing.
Okay, so we have, oh wait, that's already highlighted. Good. Okay, so now we have vehicular circulation. So are there any comments about why do this? Why plan for a safe and efficient transportation network? Yada, yada, yada. And if there's no wording comments about this, then the first action item is determine ways to make P896 and Appleton Road less desirable truck route. We did talk a lot about that. And then some of the ideas that actually were generated are in here already. Since we talked about this a lot, we did talk about the impact of GPS truck routing, directional algorithms. We talked about working with Newcastle or Newark, Delaware. We talked about the plans for 896 that are already happening, for the always stop. If you talk to traffic engineers, they will say that a stop sign is not traffic calming. So, but the average person considers a stop sign traffic calming. So it's always an interesting debate on what the township would consider a stop sign to be traffic calming or not. Based on the survey results, it would seem that the residents thought always stop is traffic calming, and that's why it's here as part of this recommendation. But again, if you hired a traffic engineer, they would specifically say a stop sign is not for the purpose of traffic calming, it's for the purpose of directional, directing traffic. So the reason I'm bringing this up, because I wanted to make sure this was worded okay for you all.
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving
We
on.
all know that stop signs calm traffic.
Yeah, I don't know what the definition of calm is. Does that mean slow it down or reduce it? Definitely slows it down, but it does not.
Slow it down. Yeah, it's not reducing it. It's
Yeah.
slowing down.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Janine, when I looked later on, when you were talking about banning brake arresters, I was wondering if the township did that throughout the township. Is that a traffic calming technology or technique?
That's a noise thing, isn't it?
No, it's
The noise thing.
They just use their regular
Well,
brakes.
what I was thinking, truck drivers, if they can't use brake arresters, they may slow down.
They could. I think the township, though, did it for the noise. I don't think.
No, my question was, would this in effect be a traffic calming thing? I know initially it's for the noise.
I don't think it'd slow them down.
So coordinate road improvements with other strategies. And this is where we get the farm equipment and the like to be able to travel on the main corridors. So we note that public roadways generally are not designed for the width of modern farm equipment. Then we write a little bit about that. And then we talk about some other strategies. Are there cooperative agreements between farmers and landowners to allow farm equipment to travel outside of public roadways? I don't know if that's even a good recommendation for Franklin, but it's one that our transportation planner came up with. During roadway improvement projects, we've talked about this over and over again. How can shoulders be changed or improved to allow these other uses? We talked about how this is where it is. The rural sized roads. So that's where it says windy, narrower roads. That would be an example of what a rural sized road is.
Yeah.
And then how to create a regular schedule of roadside maintenance we've talked in these meetings before many times about how, yes, the roadsides are maintained, but it sometimes appears that it's a hit or miss situation and it's not a consistent maintenance. So we talked about that should be considered a priority.
I don't like that it says consider how to create a schedule. We have roadside maintenance and we have a schedule. Maybe it's something, maybe Joan can speak to it, but I think it's more like review the schedule, review the current practices or something like that. It makes it sound like we're not doing it.
Yeah, we really don't operate on a schedule. We operate on an as needed basis, and our roadside mowing, we're pretty consistent with that. Where the problem lies is again in PennDOT on their roads. They tend to let things go.
And we heard a lot during the process about the whole vegetative overhanging. Not necessarily even the mowing portion of it, but the overhanging vegetation or the vegetation protruding the mowing may not capture.
That's an elevated cut. Yeah, we do that also.
Dave,
Well, how should this be changed for the wording to better capture? To, I guess, have a balance between the many comments we got about this during the community process and then what the township is actually doing.
Well, see, again, Janine, people may not be looking at a township road.
no, it was Dave Hawking and he was talking about the,
Okay, yeah, well, he requires a higher cut than normal for his equipment. And we try to accommodate that, especially on roads that we know his equipment's going to be traveling on. I mean, sometimes we would have to do a little bit higher cut on those roads.
Yeah. I'm just saying, can you reword it to say, review our schedule, or instead of create a schedule? We do the overhead cuts.
But they're not high enough maybe for farm equipment,
In some
but
cases,
it sounds like.
right, but a lot of what Dave was saying was state roads.
Should we say something to make sure the cuts are high enough for farm equipment?
It says overhanging. I think you got it.
Okay. Okay, then coordinate with PennDOT, Chester County, maintenance of state and county roads, et cetera. So then continue to coordinate with maintenance related to state roads. This is where we could put something about I think we might put something here about the vegetative cutting.
Janine, just to go back to that paragraph you have in blue, I'm not aware, and maybe somebody else is, but I'm not aware of any county roads. I mean, they're either state or township owned.
Oh yeah, it shouldn't say, you're right, it shouldn't say that. It just got, mixed into the shuffle, but let me just put a note here. Oops,
Can't you just strike it?
I just have to change it because there are county-owned bridges and there's state-owned bridges, so. Add wording like.
We don't have county-owned bridges, do we?
There are county-owned bridges, yeah.
I think we have one, Paul, and I think it's on Mount Olivet Road, if I'm not mistaken,
And that's not a state one, it's a county one?
county.
The county has almost 100 bridges throughout Chester County. We have to change it to something like this. Okay, and then moving on. So engage in the maintenance. I guess this is just talking about the PennDOT technical assistance program. So then this is the transportation improvement inventory that we talked a little bit about that. We included, just for reference, you would all know, as of 2019, what was on both the transportation improvement inventory and then the next level of higher funding, or the funding, which is called the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP. And you see the only thing that's on the TIP right now is that in Franklin is that 896 Hess Mill Road to Chamber Rock Road for safety improvements. And then everything else is sort of your wish list of what you would, Franklin would like to have done in terms of roadway. So the county, Chester County, every 2 years asks all municipalities to update this list. And then the higher priority projects will end up being elevated to the Transportation Improvement Program and funded at some point through that program. So we talked a lot about, not a lot, but we talked about discouraging speeding and cut through traffic. Working with the state police, and then have a couple strategies. And this is what Jerry was talking about they talked about a couple recommendations ago, the ban on brake arresters in Kimballsville.
Does anybody know what a brake arrestor is? Is it when they just use their gears?
Yeah,
No,
but-
it's, well, go ahead. Was that Paul? Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think it's more than that, but basically it uses the engine power as a brake. And so, yes, but there's something more to it.
They call it the Jake brake, and it creates a lot of noise when they
Yeah.
do that.
No, I
It's-
know the noise. I
The
just
back
wondering if it,
pressure on the engine is what slows it down, but I think it's more than just downshifting, Chuck, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's a setting that you can turn off or on.
Yeah.
in-
Well,
and even have it at different strengths. So it's something that they could
yeah.
oh,
adjust if needed.
so it might even be something that's on an automatic transmission as opposed to a manual. Got it.
No,
It's
Yeah.
on both.
these,
Yeah.
So
It's
then
just a
for
curious
our
question.
prioritization, determine ways to make 896 and Appleton Road less desirable as a truck route. Where do you want to put that in prioritization? Within 2 years, 3 to 5 years, explore, or ongoing?
Wouldn't you want to do it right away?
How's everybody else feel about that? Should this be an A?
Yeah, I think it should be an A, and it should go in correspondence with what they're doing on 896, if we can kind of tag on to that.
Okay. Coordinate roadway improvements with negative strategies that allow farm equipment to travel. I think this should be somewhere in your higher elevated strategies, because we did talk, a good amount about this, and also try to preserve agriculture in the township is one of your main strategies. Agricultural retention is a whole chapter. So I don't know where you all feel comfortable placing this, but
I feel comfortable making it an A.
Yeah, I think Kathy said she wanted to do that as an A. I just volunteered her.
okay. And then coordinate with PennDOT regarding the maintenance. I think this is just an ongoing thing.
Yep.
This is pretty important though, because if some of these roads are changed or the bridges are changed, it can really change the character of Franklin Township, depending on what's done to the roads and the bridges. So it sounds like it's a fluff recommendation, but it's, it definitely can make an impact on what your character is. And then I think this is ongoing, because you're going to be doing this every 2 years, no matter. And then continue to discourage speeding. I think this is an ongoing, right? And then the last grouping of actions under the recommendation, we have about 15 minutes left. So now we're getting to the on-road bicycling. Talked a little bit about why doing this, and then how. So we're identifying road improvements that facilitate on-road bicycling and still are compatible with other comprehensive plan objectives. So this is sort of the, I guess, culmination of putting together stormwater management, the Mason-Dixon stuff, and then some of the other factors we're trying to encourage, the agritourism, the movement of agricultural equipment, and also, you know, the buggies. We're kind of getting at it all here. And then I basically summarized that quickly for you. We have the Mason-Dixon stuff. We have Chester County Planning completed this active transportation inventory in 2020, and there's several recommendations in there on what the township can do to encourage more bicycle circulation, you know, within the township. And also this gets back to the Mason-Dixon, you know, planning idea. And then coordinating with those three communities to see if when improvements are done to the roadways, it can really benefit all three communities and not just be focused on one community.
I would like to ask the question right back at the beginning. I know we've been talking about it for a long time. So bicycles exist on our township roads because we have low volume and we have nice hills and it's very scenic. They just exist. People ride their bikes here because it's pleasant to ride their bike here.
Right.
This is all talking about what we're going to do to our roads to improve and encourage biking. And it's a highly, I've already heard a number of people say, I don't think we should have bikes on our roads at all. So it's a polarizing conversation. And I'm an avid biker. I would prefer that we just not even do it, because the reason that it works is because it works. So maybe I'm the only one who thinks that way, but I don't know that there was a lot of outcry from the residents that they want
Yeah,
to
it was
increase
like,
biking.
it was like 41%, wasn't it? It's in the first paragraph, I think.
I think this committee was the one that was, if I'm remembering correctly, the committee definitely talked about how to make on-road cycling safer. And then there was a concern on the committee about roadside stormwater management. Because that wording, roadside stormwater management, that was talked about somewhat in the stakeholder interviews. But, you know, we didn't get into that in the survey. So we definitely talked about how to improve, I guess, on-road bicycling. So if this is a different direction the committee wants to go in now, that's fine. But just to go back to the origins of where that came from.
Yeah. I just want to point out that there's been a lot of comments since this was originally written, and there's some pretty big opposition to.
I hadn't heard the opposition, Joe.
Oh, I have.
So if we take this out, do we just not have, I mean, I guess we don't have a recommendation for enhancing the roads for on-road cycling.
No, I think we should leave it in. Heck with Chuck.
That's fine. I obviously am not going to be
That's just
upset.
two people. There's a bunch of other people on the meeting. And everybody else is quiet. Well, let me move to the next one and we'll come back to this. So we can just get this done because we don't have much more time. So how to address funding for on-road cycling circulation. And again, there is no specific funding. It's more about when roads are updated or, you know, changed around. Do you want to do lane striping? Do you want to do sharrows? Do you want to do pavement markings, signage, et cetera? Is generally how it works.
You asked for additional comments, so I'll make one. And I would prioritize these because you can't, I agree with everything that's been said. Chuck's comments are appropriately taken. The real thing that worries me when I cycle is the high-speed roads. And so if we were to do anything with respect to on-road cycling, I would love to see some accommodation made for the high-speed roads, which would be, of course, Appleton and 896. which are not our roads. I understand that, but that's what I would prioritize and say, you know, you're not going to hurt the rural character by improving 896, so to speak, or Appleton Road in terms of putting a bicycle path to the side of it. So it's all about the speed, in my opinion. And that's just my 2 cents there, that we prioritize it and not ruin the rural character of the roads, but just maybe prioritize based on speed.
How's everybody else feel? And then there was the other comment to this recommendation component to it was this whole stormwater management situation, which we have a couple recommendations for about how to deal with that on the roadsides in particular. I guess the first question is, how does everybody feel about changing this recommendation to be more prioritization for roads with speed and I guess higher volumes as well?
My view is we should consider making cycling on our roads more safe, because the reality is people do bicycle on our roads and other townships. We were going to coordinate with other townships to make these connectors, and that's one way to encourage people to visit Kimballsville. So I think we need to recognize that we need to make bicycling safer, not just on high-speed roads, but to windy roads, because you come around a curve and there is a string of bicyclists, that's hazardous.
I think the first issue we need to address is traffic calming. You can't have bicycles on the road where there's a problem with the traffic, and that's everywhere. The board is currently looking at a plan to calm traffic down. It's going to be an ongoing process. It's not going to be overnight, but I think if we could accomplish calming the speed of the traffic, and then in conjunction, we want to encourage the cycling and make it safer, but they work hand in hand, but they can't be safe on our windy, twisty roads unless we make them drive slower. And that's the challenge. It's not just a challenge for Franklin, it's a challenge for every township. Newark, the city, who is a city, have been very successful. So maybe we work with them and get ideas from them and we move forward. But yeah, it's certainly a desirable place to bike. Beautiful scenery, but it's scary, for cyclists. It's not safe.
Mary, should we include the board action that you're working on now, the plan for, because we just talked about the plan for traffic calming in Kimballsville. We didn't really talk about it as a township-wide thing.
Well, I don't know. Well, that's up. And Dave, I want you to weigh in on this, but right now we're talking about one specific road that the residents want the traffic to slow down. Now there are more roads that are going to come right after it. And I think we're going to need a policy to start with, that this is how we go forward on our roads when there's a problem with speeding or cutting through. But it's in the early stages. So how do you feel about it, Dave?
Well, I think that, first of all, I think having this kind of verbiage in this document is fine, because one of the things we have to remember is this is not a prescriptive document. This is something that is supposed to give us remind us of what we should be thinking about when we're thinking about things. So I think it's perfectly fine in here, and it doesn't really inform how we make our decision regarding a road calming policy or moving forward. So I think it's perfectly fine to have this in there, because it doesn't force you to do anything. It's just, let's make sure that we acknowledge this and think about it, right?
Yeah, and that's how I would feel, Janine. I don't want to lock us into a policy that we don't have yet.
So you don't want to mention right now in the plan that the board is
I would say no.
on a road calming or traffic calming policy.
I would say no.
The only reason I would say no to that is that in 7 years, who knows where we'll be, right? So this document is going to outlive this board, and so you want to just say this is what you want to think about, and the policy that we have in place will be on the books, right? If there is one. So,
Mhm.
you know,
Okay, this is a policy document though, so I'm getting a little lost, but
well, what I mean is, so when, you know, this is a policy document, but it's talking about, but saying the board now is working on a policy with inside this document doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I think we're out of time and we should move on. We all agree that we should improve for the bikes, but
Yeah.
let's just
Okay.
move on. Is that all
Sounds
right?
good.
Yeah.
okay, and then you're okay with the stormwater management actions that are in here for the roadsides? All of these about the update to the stormwater management ordinance, design construction. It's sort of a weird juxtaposition to have these both together, but that was very important to, you know, we had the talks the first couple times around, so I guess we'll leave them there. So let's just go back and do the prioritization here. And that is the identify roadway improvements. Would this be an ongoing, I presume, or? If I don't hear anything else, then I'm going to say ongoing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has to be, Janine.
Yep, it's
because-
ongoing for sure.
Yeah,
You suggest it, Janine.
I mean, this is what the main function of the board is dealing with our roads, you know.
right, right.
And then this will have to be consider funding for how to implement. That's either ongoing or let's explore, one or the other.
I would think explore, but
I think explore makes more sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have finished that whole portion and we have 1 minute to spare. Nan, I'll let you take back over the meeting at this point.
Okay, so I guess we're running out of time. Chuck, what do you want to do? And Barry, you want to push it to the next meeting and we can open with that?
Well, I have a quick question. Dave said that this is that we're really not looking at prescriptive solutions in this document. And what I wanted to talk about were prescriptive solutions. So is that accurate? Is it inaccurate to put, should I not be talking about prescriptive solutions?
So I guess what we want to say is, I don't think you want to necessarily hold me to that 100% of the time here, because I think when we're talking about the road program, we're really in the middle of trying to figure out what that solution is. So that's where why I was saying we don't want to put in that policy in this document.
Right.
Because we're still working on that.
Suggestion, right?
But if you have a solution, right, and you have a solution that we can solve a current problem and it's actionable, then I don't see any reason why you couldn't put it in here.
I think the point is, Chuck, we're suggesting it. We're not
Right.
demanding it.
Right. No, I understand that. So I would like to wait till next meeting to talk about my subjects.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. And Barry, Janine, you were talking about that you thought maybe Barry's comments might be better put into the next chapter anyways. Is that correct? Janine?
Well, I don't know if all the comments,
But it would be appropriate to discuss it then. We don't really have time now and I don't want to shortchange him, so we can open with that. Is that okay with you, Barry?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I
think
think we can put them in the next chapter. They do deal with, yeah, that's appropriate. I think we can do that. So what we will do is we'll open the next meeting with Barry and Chuck's comments.
Okay, that sounds reasonable.
And I would only say that it may be this chapter or the next, but if you just want to open with it, that's fine, and we can decide where to put them.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. So Joan, do we have members of the public?
Just Paul Agassi.
Oh, well, you want to unmute him and see if he wants to say anything to us?
Yeah, actually, I have one quick comment.
Okay,
So back on that table that listed all the desired road work in the township, I think I noticed in passing the Hess Mill Bridge, Hess Mill Road over White Clay Creek. Is that the bridge?
Yes, Township Bridge.
So the township replaced that bridge.
Yeah, it's already done.
It's done.
Good catch.
It's still apparently on,
It's on the tip list, though. That's not our list there.
well, it technically is. I mean, it's
Well,
the wish list that goes to the county. So that needs,
The date at the top says 2019.
right.
Right. So I'm just saying it doesn't belong there anymore.
Well, you could just change the scope to say status saying recent improvement or recent replacement instead of rehab or replace.
Well, remember, this is how it's listed on the tip, so I can't change anything. If it's wrong, then the township needs to contact the county and have it changed.
But wait. We're including incorrect information and saying we got it from someone else, so we can't fix it. That's ridiculous. So just change the heading to say we altered the tip list if that's what you need to do. But we don't want to put in here that a bridge is broken.
Or just put an asterisk there and put a note on the bottom. So you
Just
can put it on
just
there,
put
but
it
put a
at the
note
bottom.
that says completed.
Yeah, I was going to say, just footnote it.
Yeah, it says 2019. Isn't there a 2021 version?
No, I looked for one online. There isn't one that I could find.
No, because it still has to be, completed. It's not the end of 2021 yet, so.
Well,
Also, the first one, it says PA 8961. It's 896, but if you can't change it, that's a typo, I guess. And Den Road,
the first one she's talking about.
yeah, it's 896. There's no one.
Yeah, and as I'm looking at this, that's.
Would you need to just remove it then? Should I just remove this whole table then?
Yep.
Yeah,
maybe that's
because
Here,
there is no 841 Good Hope Road intersection, is there?
why don't we just remove the whole table then? And then you
841.
all can talk to, next time you get the request from Chester County Planning, then make sure you go through the transportation improvement inventory and that it's accurate. It could just be that this hasn't been,
Paul's got another good point. There is no 841 Good Hope Road.
Yeah, I guess just think of the same thing. I don't think there is. Why
Yeah,
don't we
I
just
mean-
remove it?
How this works is if we don't get, the CCPC doesn't get consistent input, then whatever was from the township the last time around, the prior 2 years, just stays on it.
It's Paul. It's
So we don't go back
896.
through and correct it, because it's not our wish list, it's a municipal wish list. So anyway, I think it's easier just to cross it out, and then next time you get the letter from Chester County Planning,
Well, you need to change the wording on the left side then.
you check what's on the wish list.
Yeah, update the wording on the left side because you're referring to a list that you're getting rid of.
Well, we're still saying it's a list. We're explaining what it is. The TIA is a list of known. So no, we're not describing this particular list. We're defining it for you. So people know what it means.
Great.
So yeah, so just be cautious next time you get the list, because I will say this happens a lot where, we'll ask a municipality for what their wish list of improvements are, and either municipalities won't get back to us or they'll say it looks fine. So there's things that stay on this list that might not actually be accurate.
Okay. Well, I think it's wise that you take it out. Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up before we say goodnight? Nope. All right, then we'll see everybody next month.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you,
All right.
guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Right.
Bye.